views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hello everyone, welcome. How are you guys doing?
Okay.
Are you excited to be here?
Yeah.
That's nice. That's good to know. Welcome to the Puerto Rican Voices Season 4 entitled Review Puerto Rico. Today we're having a panel discussion. We're going to begin now, so please, if you can, we're kindly asking you if you can put your phones on silent mode.
Oh, shit.
Since we're doing live streaming and recording.
Yeah.
So today we're going to have a panel discussion, as I mentioned, about the recovery and rebuilding process of Puerto Rico and the Puerto Rican community. First, we are going to give thanks to the panelists for taking the time to be here with us. We are grateful and very excited to have you here. And also, thank you to BronxNet for collaborating with Centro and also for supporting this event. And I would like to present the producer of this Season 4, which is Melissa Ramos. She's going to be here with us, sharing a couple of words.
Yeah.
Thank you. Welcome to everyone. So Puerto Rican Voices is and has been an effort of Centro to expose those that are making a difference in Puerto Rico and in the diaspora. It also serves as a connection for all the communities from the island and from the diaspora. As a producer, this has been a very enriching process for me. It has been a process of discovery, right? You continue to discover as you help this cause. And I like to thank you, the panelists. They are in the show. They are amazing, I have to say. And we want to invite you to watch a reel that we have. Hope you enjoy it. Remember, CUNY TV and Bronx
Voices is brought to you by the Center for Puerto Rican Studies, with the generous support of the New York City Council and Hunter College of the City University of New York.
Es el televisor, ya. Buscar.
And enduring corruption were key motivating factors for the ousting of Puerto Rico's former governor, Ricardo Rosselló.
Hoy les anuncio que estaré renunciando.
Puerto Rican Voices interviews experts and journalists that were in the front line of these historic events. When Hurricane Maria barreled across Puerto Rico, the island's economy was already in crisis, and now it's even worse. Puerto Rican Voices examines a growing effort to lift the economy from the ground up as business-savvy communities turn to social entrepreneurship.
We realized at some point that people were going to start to leave the island because people had different emergencies, and we didn't see that the state was prepared.
The diaspora responded immediately.
We have raised about $500,000. That money is going directly to the nonprofits all over the island.
Organizations such as Diaspora por Puerto Rico, Acacia Network, and Cometa November came up with solutions helping hundreds of Puerto Ricans inside and outside the island.
No one expects something like this to happen. So it was a surprise for all of us that we will get this wave.
Thousands of Puerto Ricans relocated to Florida. The massive influx of students and families inspired an unprecedented response from the diaspora in the heart of the Sunshine State.
We've seen an increase in suicide rate, which really is a telling sign that mental health needs to be addressed.
From Massachusetts to Florida, see how Puerto Ricans joined forces to help rebuild Puerto Rico.
We lost millions and millions of trees as a result of these hurricanes, impacting not only the environment but the livelihood of people in Puerto Rico.
La Casa Pueblo se convirtió en una casa abierta, se convirtió en un oasis energético.
Communities came together and joined efforts in order to help with the recovery after Hurricane Maria. Organizations such as CAMBU and Casa Pueblo, they help with basic needs and assist communities in becoming more resilient.
Ese conglomerado de iglesias, pues teníamos en nuestras reservas pues alimento, agua, inmediatamente suplimos esas necesidades apremiantes.
Religious leaders became a lifeline for their region as they were entrusted with supplies.
Y ahora mismo, a través de esta educación, las personas han ido conociendo que hay otras maneras de tener energía.
From solar microgrids to energy co-ops, communities are working on a more resilient electrical system and the need for more localized energy solutions.
The most important part is that the common denominator guiding these protests was indignation, indignación.
They are re-energized, and they refuse to see a repeat of the past failures as they help rebuild Puerto Rico. Watch Puerto Rican Voices on BronxNet and CUNY TV. For air dates and times, visit facebook.com/CentroPR.
Good.
With no further ado, With no further ado, I present to you the Center for Puerto Rican Studies Director, Edwin Melendez.
Buenas noches. I think this needs to be turned on.
So,
Hey?
you're supposed to come here and fix it and see if you have audio.
Oh, yes, I have audio. Buenas noches. So, thanks for being here tonight. It's my pleasure to share some thoughts with you and introduce and sort of moderate this panel with my colleagues. They all had a hand on the fourth season of Puerto Rican Voices. Puerto Rican Voices was intended to reflect the Puerto Rican contributions to American history as it unfolds over the first 3 years, and we capture a lot of organizations. But when Maria happened, we decided to devote this season, the fourth season, exactly to what was happening in Puerto Rico and to the interactions between the diaspora and the people that were making a difference in the island. And we thought we were going to capture all that in a few months and have it ready, and it took a long time to produce the season. So our producer faced there were no roads in many places. The coordination is still for many months you didn't have energy, water, and so forth. So it was the logistics of this were a bit complicated. I want to thank Melissa and Elizabeth and all the people that went down there. Waldo's not here. Our camera folks are not here tonight, but they deserve a big round of applause for all the effort that they did. Let me just say that the season is not over yet. We still have a couple more episodes to go. The last one is still being produced. The last one is going to close with an eye on how do we combat corruption, both from the federal standpoint and the local standpoint. We're still working on that. And I think we're missing one or two more on health and other topics. But we have 15 episodes. They are all in YouTube right now. And we've shared that with organizations so that they can use it to promote their own cause and to demonstrate to people what they do. So I have a distinguished group of panelists with me. As I said, they all play a role. Some of them were experts, and some of them represented organizations, and some of them actually were both of those things. But on my right, I have Victor Martinez, who's a co-founder and treasurer of Diaspora for Puerto Rico, one of the organizations that we highlighted. Victor, former Central staff, initiated this organization while he was with us. It's a great effort. And he can speak a bit more about what they do. I have Ana Mar Carrion Silva, who represents, she's the Chief Development Officer para la Naturaleza. Those of you who know Puerto Rico is a major conservation trust in Puerto Rico. Their goal is to have sort of conservation measures for, I think is half of the island by
33%.
33% by 2033.
Mm-hmm.
Go figure. But you're close to 20% right now. But
around 17.
17. So you can talk more about that. We also have Teresa Santiago, who's the chairperson, honorific chairperson, forever chairperson. She just stepped down as a chairperson of the Cometa November, but for more than 20 years, I think close to 25 years. She's 33. Wow.
That's the number tonight.
Wow.
Not only 33 though.
Yeah, wow, yeah. I mean, okay, pardon me. Centro is a founder member of Cometa November as well. We're very proud of the work that they did. And they have, each of these organizations have episodes devoted to them. So I invite you, after you listen to what they have to say, if you haven't seen the episodes, go back to YouTube tonight, type Centro PR, and they're going to all pop up there. And you can pick and choose your, do one of those things that you do with Netflix, just stay the whole night and watch all of them. And on my extreme left, not coincidentally, I have Dr. Judith Aponte. She's a professor here of nursing at Hunter College, and she was one of the experts that allow us to go through health, which I understand is the next episode coming up, if I'm recycling and then health. Okay, so let me. We had a series of questions for the panelists. But what I will do is ask them to do a brief introduction of the organizations and how, some general remarks about not just the connection to others, between Puerto Rico and the diaspora, but some general thoughts about the role that, not Centro necessarily, but the role that supporters that can do this type of work mean for their organizations as partners and collaborators. So let me start on the extreme right. I'm going to start with Victor because what they do as an organization, I think, is the other side of the coin of what was happening in Puerto Rico. So Victor, you want to share some initial remarks? Take 2 or 3 minutes so that we can.
Yeah, so Edwin, thank you so much for having us here tonight. It's a great honor to be part of a panel and that Puerto Rican Voices continues. I remember how this project started with the first season. Yeah, I was part of that. So our organization, Diaspora for Puerto Rico, or Diaspora por Puerto Rico, was created right after the hurricane passed through Puerto Rico. It was in October 2017 that we basically created this organization. It started as an initiative, and it was the simple idea of having a website with information of organizations and services of the city for all the families that were coming after the hurricane here to the city. That was the simple idea. And especially in Spanish, and as we also always say, in Puerto Rican Spanish. That it was really important because we saw that a lot of the families were coming through the airports, and they were provided some documents from the state, but most of them were actually in English. And if you have if you know these families, if you have worked with them, most of them, they actually don't know English. So they saw these documents, these papers, and they were like, okay, what is this? Then also the city had created a center here for people to go, but the problem is that the city wasn't doing outreach to people and to connect, let them actually to know about this center. So that's why we also created, one, the website, and two, through social media. We started to put information. It was surprising how people started to share the information, how people started to tag others, oh, go to this. It was insane, how crazy it got to us. Even in our website as well, people could provide their information and they will call us. So we were all volunteers, all at night, at 10, 9, 11 o'clock in the evening, talking to people either in Puerto Rico or here, and seeing okay, what are your needs? What do you need? Okay, you need housing, how you're going to get even something basic, how you're going to get from one place to another, or that kind of stuff, all kind of information that you need, because basically people were trying to come, and especially because of the TSA program that was for a lot of the families, they came to hotels here in the city that they were placed by FEMA. So the only situation in many cases is that even they were sent here, but then they maybe didn't have transportation from the airport to the hotel, or how to get there, or even how is the neighborhood where the hotel is, or different kind of information. So that's basically the idea that we started with it. It evolved to an organization. Now we have fully the tax exempt. We're a 501c3. We went through all that process through these years. And now we also, apart from this, we also created we did some cultural events, like the El Día de las Madres, or Three Kings Day. Thank you to Cometa November that we partnered last year, and we were able to provide the coats and different stuff to the families as well. So it's also to build community in some way, because if you come from Puerto Rico, you know that it's really difficult to come here into the city, that it's cold, and you don't know where to go and that kind of stuff. So to at least have some kind of community building, to have some friends, to go to someone to go to talk about pasteles, coquito, all that kind of stuff. And our position right now, our work right now is in what way we can connect all these families, all these people that have come, and they're still even coming still today. How we can connect it to even Puerto Ricans and organizations that have been here for a long time. The Puerto Rican community here has been for decades and decades here. So how can we create that connection? So that's what we're working right now. If you have any questions, let me know. We can talk a little bit more. But yeah, that's the work that we have been doing for the past 2 years. Yeah.
Gracias. I forgot that Victor was the founding producer for this program. As you know, he started much younger with us, and actually worked for the first 3 seasons with the program. Ana Mar, you want to?
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Also, join Victor in thanking you for having me here. As Edwin mentioned, I work with Para la Naturaleza. Para la Naturaleza, it's a nonprofit in Puerto Rico. We do environmental conservation and historic preservation. And as we were mentioning, our overarching mission is to protect 33% of our islands by 2033. We have around 64 nature reserves in Puerto Rico. We protect around 36,000 acres of land. As many of you might know, some of our reserves, Hacienda Buenavista, which is a coffee plantation in Ponce. We have the lighthouse, Cabezas de San Juan in Fajardo. So what I wanted to mention is a little bit what happened before the hurricane and after the hurricane. So we turned around 50 years old, we turned 50 years old next year. And we've been a land trust, we've been protecting land for many years, and we've been actually helping with reforestation, working with communities, etc. When Maria hit, what happened was that our organization, we had already been working with some of these communities and had already been doing a lot of, obviously, conservation work, decided to really go outside of our reserves and really connect with a lot of the communities that are near and within our own nature reserves. And we decided to focus on three main areas. In the community side, we've been working since 2017 to retrofit 30 community centers in Puerto Rico with solar panels and water filtration systems. In the reforestation area, we've set a very aggressive goal of planting 750,000 trees in around 7 years, and that program has launched. We've already planted we've produced around 195,000 trees, and we've planted around 70,000. And finally, in the agricultural side, we had been supporting already farmers, but since the hurricane, we've actually established a whole unit for agroecological farmers and to continue to support agroecological farmers. Outside of that, obviously, our organization, everything we do is educational. We have volunteers that come and help us in all of these areas. We have many people also that we work with other organizations. And just because I don't want to take too much time, I do want to mention that the diaspora support after Maria, as you know, incredible. Where we are right now and all the work we've been able to do definitely had not been able to happen without the support we got from Puerto Ricans in the States and from organizations in the States, including people like Teresa and Cometa November, and obviously El Centro. All the work that we do and opportunities even like tonight of being able to share the work that we do really help us in letting people know that we do what the organization does and being able to maybe connect and partner up with other organizations. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
And
Teresa, you want to take it from there?
Thank you, Edwin, also for allowing us to come and tell our story also. So Cometa November is a 33-year-old nonprofit organization established to celebrate all things Puerto Rican during the month of November. Over the years, we have different scholarship programs, and about 13 years ago, we started a educational trip to Puerto Rico to learn, bring people that were Puerto Rican or non-Puerto Ricans that had been to the island only to the touristy areas, and that's it. They didn't explore the island. So we took it upon ourselves, and we've had a wonderful trajectory with bringing people and learning about our culture. So when Hurricane Maria hit, we already had substantial nonprofits that we worked with over the years. We were already getting calls before the storm was hitting. Like, they were afraid. They were like, "We're really gonna need your help." And so we were on alert. And as soon as it hit, September 29th, 2017, Cometa November stepped up. We started an organization called a hurricane relief fund called Estoy con Puerto Rico. Catholic Charities of the Archdiocese of New York was our fiscal conduit, because I wanted it to be totally transparent. I wanted everyone to, it wasn't about it going to a specific nonprofit here. And we highlights, we've raised over $536,000, and there's still money coming in, which is great. We have 108 initiatives right now, either completed or about to be completed in the past 2 years. We hit about 50% of the towns in Puerto Rico, so we hit about 42 out of 78 towns. We gave to nonprofit and small businesses and micro businesses, because we saw the need for both things. We saw the need for the humanitarian piece, the rebuilding piece, and also the economic development piece, and sparking the money coming back and the small businesses coming back. the areas of support were, they range from children and families to the elderly to health, both mental and mental health was very big right now, and I know you're going to touch on it. And I just want to leave it with, we're not hearing about what's happening in Puerto Rico right now. Everybody, I mean, I understand that the tourism industry has to work. So you go to Puerto Rico right now, you go to the major tourist areas, and everything looks wonderful, looks fine. However, you leave that area, and everything is not fine. There are people still living without roofs, windows, doors, still waiting online for 45 minutes to get a meal. And these are people from all walks of life. These are people that have jobs, that don't have jobs, that they don't know how they're going to feed their children, how are they going to pay for their medical bills or any other thing. So my thing is that when we first started this, we didn't know whether we were going to raise $100 or whatever, but we did it. And I guess my call to action is that no matter what you could give to an organization like Para la Naturaleza, like whatever organization you feel you want to support. And Cometa November, I'll talk a little bit more about this later, but we have all of the organizations we gave to. We have their nonprofit status number. We have a report of what they did with the money, and that's all going to be launched on our website in the next 2 weeks. And it's incredible what they did with the money that we gave. And we didn't raise a lot of money, guys. Not the 37 million, 67 million. We didn't raise a lot of money, but we made sure that it went directly to the community and that it was used for what they said it was going to be used. I'll leave it at that.
Well, thank you for inviting me to speak here. And my perspective is completely different in a way. As Edwin said, I'm a faculty at the School of Nursing here at Hunter College. So the role that I played before, during, and even after the hurricanes has been as, at that time, I was the editor for the Hispanic Nurses Association Journal. And so I was able to use that platform to really speak about what was happening in Puerto Rico in my editorials. Also, as a member of that association, I was able to speak at different panels about what was happening and address it from a nursing perspective. I also am a researcher, so I was able to work with the Red Cross when they were speaking to people in Manhattan at the Julia de Burgos building. And I was able to speak to some of the people who moved here from Puerto Rico and speak to them about their health concerns. And it was really speaking about how are you getting your medications, how are you seeking assistance with a new physician, how are you connecting. And what surfaced was really the mental health issues. They were not worried about their diabetes. They weren't worried about where they were getting their blood pressure medication. They weren't worried about certain things that, as a healthcare provider, that's what you would expect. It was more of, I can't find the job. I don't have a place to live. I left my family behind. I don't know how they're doing. It was a constant, men as well as women, just sobbing as to how depressed they were, how horrible the experience was, what they left behind. And so it really became a different focus than the original plan of the research. And also, as a nurse, I volunteered my time, and so I was there helping out in communities because my area is community public health nursing. So that has really been my focus in terms of how do we build capacity and how do we build infrastructures that are sustainable, that it's not just a medical mission where we go there, provide treatment for the day, but never mind what's going to happen for months to come. So that's my perspective.
Thank you. Fantastic. As many of you know, Centro, this is not the only initiative that Centro undertook in reaction to Rebuild Puerto Rico, to the catastrophe and what happened afterwards. One of the first things that we did was a digital platform that we called Rebuild Puerto Rico, where people were calling us about where to donate, where to volunteer, where can we find information about this and about that. And we created a digital platform that actually provided that information. Mm-hmm. And our servers, when we started, the first few weeks, they were crashing over and over because people just wanted to know what to do, where to donate, until we figured out we need a bigger server and we need to do this in a different way. And we figured it out. But since then, a lot of things have happened. One of the things that we did also was to create, we were concerned about the crisis before the catastrophe, before the hurricanes. And then we turned those events around. They're called Puerto Rico, Puerto Ricans. The whole punchline of those events is that whatever happens there affects all of us. Mm-hmm. And that we need to start thinking about 9 million, not just 3 there and 5, 6 here, or what have you. That our community has, this window, historical window, has affected us in a way that has no precedent in our history, right? You think about the Great Migration in the 50s, and about 600,000 Puerto Ricans left the island. Well, we're surpassing 1 million since the economic crisis started, and it's a big difference between now and then. It hasn't stopped yet, right? It continues. People continue to be, migrating, and so we have reconfigured the diaspora. Think about that. 1 million people over the last year. A lot of impetus in all these communities. Florida is now the biggest state. Even the old enclaves in our region, New York, Connecticut, Hartford, we conducted studies about what's happening up there. We have grown. These people have brought impetus to our community. It brought people that require culturally competent services. Who's providing advice to the children and all that, right? Mm-hmm. But one thing that it has done with that reconfiguration between the diaspora and the island is that now when you go to Puerto Rico, no one questions the diaspora anymore. Because when you go to a room and you say, how many of you have children, parents, loved ones out in the States, I will say everybody raised their hands. So before, éramos negros, éramos pobres, váyanse para allá, vengan si no quieren. So the attitudes have been shaped by this new historical window. So what I want to ask them is, how do they see that bridge? And how that bridge, human relations, people's relations, organizations to organizations, civic sector to civic sector, mostly bypassing governments, although, I will say elected officials go there, but for the most part, this is a civic movement. It's, the diaspora solidarity comes out of the grassroots. It's not, even though there are governors that send their delegations and what have you, it's not driven by that. And as that occurs, attitudes and relationships in Puerto Rico change. So what I want to do is ask the panelists to speak from their perspective, conservation and what have you, how they see that solidarity and how they see our interactions in this particular period of crisis changing the relationships between the islanders and the diaspora. And what is that experience? We're living that as we go along. So I'm going to start now in the middle somewhere. So any one of you want to pick up the topic, and then we'll you want to start?
I can start if you want. I don't know.
There you go. They primarily take care of people that come here, which is an aspect. It's the other side of the coin.
So it's interesting what you mentioned. So our name is Diaspora for Puerto Rico. Diaspora por Puerto Rico. Everyone asks us, oh, do you work in Puerto Rico then? We say, no, not quite. And it's like, okay, then why your organization, the name is Diaspora por Puerto Rico? And like our saying is like, aquí allá todos somos Puerto Rico. No matter where you are, we're all Puerto Rico. And especially we work with the families over here. And not only just like as well with all the families that are coming, but we want like to work with all the like the Puerto Rican diaspora, because we think that if we help as well like the Puerto Rican diaspora, it's a way that for us then to help Puerto Rico. So we have that bridge, and that's like our target. And the base of our organization is basically working with other organizations. So we basically with most of the Puerto Rican organizations here in New York and actually in other states, because in many cases we had even families over here that then they were moved to Massachusetts, to Holyoke, to Betty. So we will contact them with Betty, and they will go then over there at Holyoke, and they will go to an organization over there. As well, we went to Florida. At the end, there was a couple of families also that they moved to Florida. And then we were able to connect them with organizations over there. So it was basically this kind of network that we created that people didn't knew. Like a lot of people, and I came from Puerto Rico 7 years ago, and I didn't knew a lot even about the amount of organizations, Puerto Rican organizations in the States. Thanks to Centro, I learned that. And that's something that we are trying as well, like to educate, like the other organizations that are here and how to connect them then with other organizations here. So at the end, we base our organization, as Ellie mentioned, like the 50 and 60, that there was a lot of migration over here. So we base our organization on the idea that there was also a lot of organizations at that time that helped a lot of the families that came, that maybe they didn't have a code or that kind of stuff, and they provided that. So we did a website that's different to what happened in the 50s or 60s, but we are based basically on the same idea at that time. So, yeah.
That was called Congreso de los Pueblos, by the way. You guys want to?
So with Cometa November, I have to tell you that that 108 initiatives we have in Puerto Rico are our brothers and sisters. We will always support them. Whenever we have continued, there are like 4 or 5 organizations that we continue to go to every year to help. And that relationship that has been formed, because in some places, what we gave was so little, and that was the first money that they got for anything. So they're forever grateful to us, and we're forever grateful to them. And there's a wonderful relationships that are building. And again, there's no government money going into any of these organizations. This is all community coming together and doing for themselves. They're picking up, they're doing whatever they need to do, they're doing it, and the diaspora plays a huge role. And again, if you want, and it transforms here. We have people that go with us to Puerto Rico. We have had several things happen in the trips. One person decided that she wanted to stay in Puerto Rico, and she stayed for a whole year doing volunteer work on a retiree's salary, but that's what she felt she needed to do, and that's what she did. Another person went on our trip, a young man, worked for an energy company. Now, because of him, 5 of the organizations that we visited on the trip that we went with him are now going to get solar panels. I mean, these are little seeds that are planted that we don't see. We don't see it because we're just trying to do the work, but any little thing that you can do is so welcomed because there's really nothing. And again, with all of the issues that Puerto Rico is now facing, you know, a debt that can't be paid, a minimum wage that I don't know how people live on it, a health crisis that's there's not, I don't know how, I mean, pensions that are going to be taken away. I mean, it's just so dire that the diaspora plays a huge role because it's all private dollars. It's all one-on-one. So on our end, it's been an amazing relationship that we have started with organizations in Puerto Rico and with communities in Puerto Rico. And those are going to be relationships that we're going to have for a very, very long time. And yes, that stigma of tú eres de allá y yo soy de acá, that has ended.
The Spanglish.
In Spanglish, you're from there, you're over there, we're over here, that's ended. There's no distinction anymore, and that's a wonderful thing.
So I think definitely for us, there are many obviously really bad things that happen with Maria. One of the biggest positives, like you've said, there was, all Puerto Ricans came together for sure. I actually live here in New York, even though I work for the organization in Puerto Rico, I go back and forth. And interestingly enough, the reason that before Maria, I started working for the organization 2 years before Maria here, was because we wanted to let people here know the work that we were doing and try to share with them our goals and see if we can build collaborations and strengthen the relationship with the organizations here in the States. Obviously, after Maria happened, not only did those relationships obviously became stronger, but one of the most interesting things that happened even within Puerto Rico is that there are organizations in Puerto Rico that we had been talking since, for years. We should do something together. We should work together. Let's try to see how our missions come together. And when Maria happened, all of a sudden, even within Puerto Rico, many organizations just banded together, and we are doing so much work right now with many of the community-based organizations in Puerto Rico that we had not actually engaged before. And even talking about mental health, so one of the things that, what was the most beautiful things that came out of this for us, we do a lot of programming for kids in nature. And as we know, in mental health, I say nature is one of the best things that could happen for someone in order to address mental health. So many of the kids in those communities were lost. I mean, they were so affected in the communities that we work with. And as a result of that, there's an organization called the National Recreation Foundation, and they're not here, but one of their board members is here in New York, and they heard about us, they reached out to us, and since then we've been able to create our first ever after-school program where the kids from those communities that I mentioned before were able to go right after Maria. We started, I mean, it was a little bit crazy because as you can imagine, we were trying to recover, we were trying to do a million things, but for our president, really taking care of those communities and really taking care of those kids was so important. And by allowing them to go after school, some of them had just started school, to go to our reserves or for us to go to them and be able to spend some time doing things, volunteering, and also doing things in their schools and addressing what had just happened. And really addressing, what happened. It's a hurricane. I mean, it's in a sense, it's like, how come, nature's supposed to be good, but what just happened? And it's been beautiful. We just got renewed for that grant, and we're actually also went into a collaboration with the Boys and Girls Clubs as a result of that. So anyway, so that's a little bit of our experience.
So as I originally said, I bring a different spin to things. But what we saw happening, at least in the healthcare system, was many hospitals and even academic settings going and recruiting healthcare providers from in Puerto Rico, recruiting them here back to the States, which was a great thing because we had so many people that had migrated from Puerto Rico who didn't speak English, and just a cultural competency like you had mentioned was going to be addressed by healthcare providers born and raised in Puerto Rico. But a concern always comes about when there's an influx of people moving for a better life, is, well, who's left behind to take care of people in Puerto Rico if everyone is being recruited, both from organizations and people leaving just for a better life. So that is something that I'm always very concerned about, because who are the healthcare professionals left behind to provide those services?
No, their professionals are leaving, whether doctors, nurses, you know, a lot of the institutions there have been decimated, especially the ones that serve the more disadvantaged populations. Right?
And that's the challenge.
Right.
You know, who remained in Puerto Rico? Right. Well, the disadvantage in terms of the elderly population, people who are retired, and those are the ones that need the most care, whether it's mental health, physical, etc.
And the other thing I would add is that the disparities between the countryside and the urban areas, and you know, it's so apparent. You know, we were doing just a needs analysis for some grants for some local organizations, and we were looking at some towns in the interior, and some of those barrios, the average household income is like $4,000 or $5,000, and you know, besides the damage and all that. I mean, that's Africa level. Underdevelopment. I mean, it's now you go to the urban areas, it's a slightly different situation, but the disparity, the spatial disparities are heartbreaking. Now, I think they cover a little bit on what to do next in Rebuild Puerto Rico. That was my next question, but I know we're running a little bit out of time, so I want to open it to the floor, and we can direct questions to specific panelists, or they can pick up the questions as they see fit. But I want to open a little bit more to the interaction. You know, obviously, you know, our focus in Puerto Rico has been to build relationships with organizations like Piranha and others to really try to, you know, what we can contribute as a research institution is to help them figure out, in our experience with our community development, how do we link experts from the diaspora to what's going on in Puerto Rico based on their needs. And we've been successful in working with several coalitions, the Faith-Based Coalition, the Conservation Coalition, the recycling community, and I can go down the list. So for us, it's really finding partners that can benefit from contacts with us and the initiatives that we have. I know there are some people in the audience that have taken initiative. So if you're going to make a comment, make it, you know, a couple of minutes at the most. And if you have questions, this is the time to engage with the panelists. So let me open it to the panel. Before we go on, let's give them a round of applause for all the work that they do. And I need to wake up the audience. Luis Reyes,
having been
doctor.
Here last weekend for the Somos conference and having a conversation with the educators, one of the concerns is the larger picture and the funding that is not getting to Puerto Rico from the federal government. But at the same time, knowing that that's a bigger problem, I would like Teresa to maybe tell us about Cometa November, but Hispanic Federation and all of the other organizations that are here that work like El Puente and others, and what they're doing to help.
That's a great question. There are a lot of organizations that are based here that are also doing major work in Puerto Rico. Hispanic Federation is one of them. Acacia Network, El Puente. I don't want to. There are many, and those bridges that are built are crucial. again, because there is no government money, the money that was promised during hurricane has not gotten to Puerto Rico, federal dollars. We know the mess that's in Washington, we won't get into that, but, so again, it's all private. It's all private dollars that are really helping the communities and making those connections with major organizations like the Hispanic Federation, like Acacia, and like many others, is extremely important because they have funds more than Cometa November to give out to the organizations that are on the ground in Puerto Rico. But I believe that Hispanic Federation has an office in Puerto Rico, and that they have many initiatives that they're funding and really building those bridges.
Other questions or comments? Oh, yes.
I'm sorry because I arrived a little late, and I come from Columbia University. So now I put myself in a position in which coming from Columbia is already like a no, because the rich university and people who come and want to do everything. So I want to tell you my experience and our experience, if you want, and whatever you want to know more, then you ask me, from the point of view of our observatory. So we went to work in Vieques because many years ago, I worked for the Urban Design Lab. So we look at urban structure, planning, infrastructure. Many years ago, there was a project on the Guanos Canal with which we work with a person who is in Vieques, has a property in Vieques. She's a person who works at the State Department. She's in contact with the politician, the congresswoman, Nadia Velasquez. And she said, please come to Vieques to help because it's a mess. And so we went there, and in a way they opened the key to all the community organizations. And our approach was, as it's always been, you go, you look at the community, you talk to the community, you listen what is their first need, and then you try to help. We had 2 studios there. We are publishing the report with the project that were being done there. So with the total support of the community, we didn't go like, just to look what it is and then make the study on them. We went to give them tools for implementation. In general, we like toolbox, something that is implementable, and you see phase A, 2, 3, and whatever you can do, you do, and you are more knowledgeable of what you can ask for. And then what we can do if we fundraise, we can help. But our goal is more analysis and then to give a toolbox in the hands of the communities, let's say, with visualization, data, so they know more than they knew before. What I saw, to make it short, and now I don't want to say what we did, what we didn't do, but to make it short, our observatory, I saw that when it's the phase of crisis, everyone wants to go to help. Some they want to go to help because so some money gets to them. Let's say some even emergency organization who are not the disaster organization. So they arrive there like hawks to position themselves to get the money that then they work. And so, okay, they help, but they work. Others, they come completely disorganized, so they come to see out of good heart. So I found that what is my question now is like there is so much to do, but even we have to think that they could have another event like this. The climate studies are such that it's not the only, it will be not the first, and it will be not the last. So how can we do now to put the foundation of something that eventually is better? It's not only to rebuild better, it's like how you prepare yourself so next time it's not such a mess. And so the first things that I see, why there is not a database of all the organization, you did an enormous work. I mean, the Center for Puerto Rican Studies is like the foundation, right? The column of this. But it should be done something so there is not this confusion. So why not all the organization intervenes? They have like a database. They know this organization is doing this. These are covering this. These are not doing anything. And so we know, and we don't know, like it's not like, because otherwise you have the crisis, you have the emergency, and you are like, we say, I'm Italian, I know Spanish, but so it says, you have double damage, the damage of the damage and the damage of the person who don't understand you. So it's like a very frustrating situation. Then death component, the community component, these are all enormous factors. They are discarded from the economic analysis.
Yep.
These are very important.
Well, thank you for the work that you do. I will make two comments in regard to your questions. The first one is that no matter how much we do on the civic sector engagement, the reality is that we're $100 billion in damage. Our gross national product is $100 billion. So put it in perspective, you had like a devastating effect of that. The government, we have an insurance policy which is called the Stratfor Act, which is what serves all the states and territories. That insurance, it's a special law that doesn't need specific, the way it works is that every time there's a disaster, Congress appropriates funding that doesn't have to be scored, for other purposes, right? They have approved $42.5 billion for Puerto Rico. Of those 13 billions went to Puerto Rico. Of those 13 billions, more than 90% of the funding went to non-resident companies and service providers. Okay, and it was mostly for the emergency phase to restore the grid. There was a couple of $1 billion in that, and I can go down the list. A lot of public assistance, meaning evacuees and they still haven't paid the cleaning up part. I will say compared to any other storm, we're not only way behind the payment schedule, but the prospect that funding, the other 29 billions that remain, are going to go to Puerto Rico anytime soon, it's a question mark because, in part, I will concede the corruption perception is a problem. But I will say that more than that, the political acrimony and all the political context will delay that funding getting to Puerto Rico. So if I would call for action here, I will say the first responsibility that we have is to make sure that funding that was appropriated by Congress, which is only partial, what Puerto Rico needs to rebuild, right, gets there. It's not just the federal money, it's also the private insurance money, but I'm going to leave that aside. On top of that, there are some policy issues that the diaspora can affect. And in our conferences, that's the focus that we have. The Medicaid appropriation expire in September, and after 2 years funding, and it's called the Medicaid cliff because more than half of the population in Puerto Rico depends on that funding. Secretary Mnuchin said that they were not going to allow multinational corporations to deduct at local cost the taxes that they pay in Puerto Rico that account for about 20% of the budget in Puerto Rico. So if that tax goes in effect, that contribution of multinational corporations, mostly pharmaceutical, is going to be decreasing. It's not going to disappear, but just like the 936, it's going to decline over time. So we have a lot of responsibility in making sure that the Puerto Ricans, Puerto Rico and American citizens in Puerto Rico are treated fairly in the context of the insurance policy that we all have, which is the Stratfor Act and the recovery funding. So I'm going to leave that there for, you had another point, which is about the data. We are proud to have the only data set, the only GIS database that actually has everything that FEMA has, everything that the Planning Board has, everything that other planners and University of Puerto Rico have, And we're the only one who have taken the initiative of centralizing that. Because they, for some reason, they all think that this is private data, and this is data that belongs to the public. And it's taken a lot of effort to actually have access to that data. We have been successful at doing that. But having said that, that's not even the first step. It's an important step, but it's very incomplete. Why? Because that data sitting in our database makes no difference. We need to train people how to use it to do community visualization, which is what you did, exactly what we need to do, empower communities to imagine their future and to look at the assets that they have and all that. That has to be training, and that's part of what we're trying to do. But anyway, that's a longer conversation. And I don't want to get going here. Nestor, you had a question?
My question was...
Or comment, yeah.
Well, the question, whether anyone was tracking what foundations have been given to Puerto Rico since the crisis.
Yes, there is a report. You want to talk about that? Or there's a report by Yanis Petrovich that just accounted for all the foundation donations to Puerto Rico. We also created a database to understand who's doing what, when, and where. That was the first thing that in a meeting that we had December 3 of 2017, the Puerto Rico organizations asked us to do. And it's taking this long to figure out how do you collect that data. But I'm not going to spend too much time explaining what it is, but we have all the elements to start making it public. For example, we just did a canvas of all the Puerto Rican organizations. They are listed probably about 11,000 organizations, nonprofits, but we clean up that data set and we know there are about 1,500 that are active, that actually you can get on the phone or get in contact with them. So that database is going to go public. We also have an artificial intelligence program that is retrieving from news media and from websites and all the other sources, all the information about the actions that people have undertaken. We're trying to scrap the funding from the federal government and where it goes, but that data is lagging. So these are bigger problems than we have capacity in Puerto Rico. And the money that is going there, which is in the hundreds of millions of dollars, are going to American corporations that then go and hire local talent. And it's the new Hacienda Peon systems. Okay, and by the way, what they charge to do in millions of dollars is not getting any impact on the policy making or in the reconstruction and rebuilding of Puerto Rico. If you've heard the phrase disaster capitalism, this is the definition of disaster. At the same time that the conditions that my colleagues have described at the ground level and the misery that our people are going through, you have this sort of disconnection between the funding that is going, the funding that is withheld, and the impoverishment and suffering of our people there. That's not an answer, but...
If I can say, though, that a few things. One, I think one of the key things that need to happen, so on the positive side, right, organizations like ours, so since the hurricane, for example, the whole project of the solar, of the community centers, that's taken us, I mean, we're still working on it. We thought it was a project we're going to be able to get done like this, to be able to have the next season, have all these community centers set with their solar panels and filtration systems. Right now, we're hoping to finish the 23rd one by the end of the year. So it's taken us this long to finish those projects, and we still have 7 more to go. We have here Hunter Johansson, who's an amazing soul, who's actually with a program called Solar Responders, who's people that have gone from the States. He's actually moving to Puerto Rico to put solar panels in fire stations. So there are things that are happening that hopefully, I mean, Maria was such a huge phenomenon that preparing for something like Maria is so hard, but at least taking actions like the solar side of the equation, right, and trying to teach people of things that they can do with water filtration, with solar, etc., hopefully will have us a little bit more prepared. That's one thing. 2, with regards to foundations. So foundations before Maria, like we're not on the radar. I mean, Puerto Rico barely got any money from foundation. Now we've gotten a little bit. I mean, we've gotten help, and what my organization, Para la Naturaleza, has definitely benefited in the sense that we have been able to at least go into these foundations, and because it's Puerto Rico, they will give us a meeting, we'll sit down, and some of them have given us funding. There's a lot more to be done, and I think one of the things that I've asked people to do, not only with us, but with all of those wonderful organizations that are in Puerto Rico doing work, is we need to do a better job of letting people know here in the States what we're doing, which is a little bit of what I try to do, and also for the people there to try to learn through El Centros, through any other mechanism that they can, the work that is being done, that when everyone knows someone, that when you are actually have those connections, you can connect them also to the organizations in Puerto Rico, and they can learn from us in the sense of maybe funding us for our projects, but also we are setting up ourselves. We learned so much from this experience that hopefully we can even set up ourselves as a model, a good model to follow in some areas of what we've done and what some of the successful stories that have come out of what people have done in some organizations. Be out there letting people know how we've managed and how we've dealt with the situation, and in the few areas that it's been a positive, that we can share that too, and how we plan to continue to work in order to get to Puerto Rico to be more resilient as much as possible. So,
Judith, Teresa? No.
On my end is a little different, but I hear what you're saying about organizations being able and capable of doing the work. And one of the things that we made sure was that the funding that we gave, all of the organizations were able to do the work. They had their nonprofit status. They had staffing. We really wanted to make sure that whatever little bit we gave, that it was going directly to the community. The other thing is the sharing of information. And I'll share, we have a report that's coming out now. It's taken us like 2 years because most of the things that we funded, most of the projects that we funded are long-term projects. They are solar energy, there's water filtration, and they're long-term, so that if something like this happens again, and there's also education. There was a lot of education involved in the funding that we gave, so in communities, so that if this happens again, the people know or have an idea of how to move forward, because this just stopped Puerto Rico in its track. So I hear what you're saying. So yes, it's important to make sure that you know the organizations that are set up to do the work, that can do the work. They have long-term ideas, that education takes place, and again, to share that information with a global community. So all of the information that I have, I'm going to give to you, okay, so that it continues to
We'll
go.
pass it to the public. Judith, you want to? Yeah. Victor?
So I just want to say that the work that Centro has done is amazing, with all the data that they have collected through all this time. One of the things, like thinking maybe of next steps for us, there's still a lot of families here in New York. We have around 150 to 200 families that are still in city shelters in the city. Think about that. So the crisis, is also in Puerto Rico, and as well here, is still here. These are mostly families that the shelter, like the hotel program ended, and they were basically kicked out of the hotels, and they had nowhere to go. They lost their houses over there in Puerto Rico, and then here they didn't have nowhere to go. So basically the city was the one that had to take all these families, and the only place that they had for them is the city shelters. So a lot of them, they have been able like to find apartments. You know, if you live here in the city, you know the housing crisis here and how difficult it is to find an apartment and that kind of stuff. So still, like, we're pushing for like to then like these families to find a place to live. And then there's other services. One of the things that we are pushing now is that actually Puerto Rico, they closed their office here in New York. And 2 years ago, actually, it's like 2.5 years ago. And now there's a lot of people that have situations that they need their birth certificate or their other documents from Puerto Rico. And there's no place here in New York to go. So we're pushing like maybe like the government of Puerto Rico, and as well to see if we can do like a partnership over here with either the city or the state to open that office here. So that's one of the things that we're working right now. And as well that you mentioned the protocols, something that we are talking about that also the city and also the federal government needs to improve their protocols related to climate refugees. This is something that a lot of people came here to the city. This happened also in Florida and other states. And a lot of people started like to leave the island, then like, what are we going to do with that? So I think that if something happens, that we cross our fingers that it's not going to happen, but we know the world that we're living right now. We need to be prepared in Puerto Rico and as well over here in the States. So.
Bueno, before I close, I want to direct you all to Centro PR, our website. We have put about 4 or 5 reports. There are a couple more coming on mitigation and local nonprofit capacity. Those are forthcoming. They're hold in my desk for now, but they will be out soon. And any map that you see there, you can replicate with our GIS application. Okay, we are up to the changes in zoning laws, and so it's very updated with the data that it's available. So I invite you to go there and share the resources. We're seeking, for example, Hunter. Where is Hunter? In the back. We all these projects like what Teresa mentioned about Cometa November. If we get the data, we will enter it, and it will be part of the image that people, so when you zoom to a barrio, you will see the resources that are flowing there and from where. And so it's work in progress. We have to do it all crowdsourcing. So I invite you to cooperate with that. So I want to leave some time for conversation one-on-one with the panelists. I just want to thank them for all the work that you do, for being here tonight, and for you to be a great audience. Easy questions. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you.